already started. Thank you very much. You're welcome. We'll just hang tight for a few more minutes to get everyone signed in, and then we'll get started.
Of course. Same project.
All right, it's 10:04. I believe we should get started. I don't know if we want one of the chair members to start and lead, or I can. I can at least start with introductions. My name is Samantha Bailey. I'm the environmental planner here at PPACG.
Hunter Greeno, Colorado Springs Utilities.
Roy Heel, Security.
Yeah, there we go.
Water and Sanitation District.
Jonathan Moore, Found Sanitation District.
Becky Orcutt, Palmer Lake Sanitation.
Jeff Hallbrook, Palmer Lake Sanitation.
Roger Sams with GMS.
Jim Heckman with Fountain Sanitation and Lower Fountain Metro.
Dave Stanford, Academy School District 20.
Mike Fink, City of Fountain Water.
Jim McKendrick, Monument Sanitation District.
Al Moffett, Citizen, and working with PPACG, representing listening.
William S. PPACD.
Mike Westap, Portland. John Hanson, PPACG.
Annie Berleman, Colorado Springs Utilities.
Tyler Gurney, Cherokee Metropolitan District.
Okay, first on the agenda, we have review of the Willow Springs Ranch wastewater lift station and the application. I believe Forsgren and Associates provided a short presentation for you today.
All right, thank you all for allowing us to be here to present this site application today. It's for the Willow Springs Ranch wastewater lift station. And we have gone through several reviews from a few different agencies already. And Sam, you going to work the... Okay. I can only do so much with this cover slide. We have gone through the site application review committee with PPACG, had that meeting last week and did a similar presentation to that group, and some of you were at that. We also had previously presented to the Upper Monument Water Quality Association. The El Paso County Public Health has also reviewed the application and provided input and comments. We've incorporated them into the copy of the application that you had provided to you. Town of Monument also reviewed the application. This property is located within, was recently annexed last year into the Town of Monument. So the Town of Monument Planning Department reviewed it and had no comments. They've already signed off on it. And then the Tri Lakes Wastewater Treatment Facility, the supervisor there has signed off on approving to receive the wastewater flow from the development. I also want to point out that back in 2009, this same, or very, very similar lift station, same site, was approved by CDPHE, but the project never went forward at that point, and it since has expired. That approval has expired, so that's why we're going back through this process again for a new site application approval. So the property is about 219-acre property in South Monument. As I mentioned, it's planned for 400 homes on that build-out. The first phases of that, the developer is planning on constructing about 230 homes during the first couple phases in the beginning of the project. It's located on the west side of Interstate 25, just north of West Baptist Road, and just east of the Forest Lakes development. Developers expecting this to be developed over about a 10-year time frame, but obviously that's dependent upon the economy and sales of lots and so forth. But that's the expectation, is about 10 years to build out. Okay. As far as the wastewater system that's being planned, there'll be a gravity collection system that will be collected north, south, and west sides of the development, and that will then flow by gravity to a wastewater lift station that's located just south of Monument Creek, which flows through the development, and I'll show that to you in more detail on a map coming up. The lift station, besides for 270 gallons a minute, will pump through a pressure force main that will be located either within the right-of-way or possibly even within the pavement of the new road that will be constructed north and south through the development. Then the force main will discharge to an existing gravity sewer collection system that's owned by the Monument Sanitation District already, and that will then flow to the wastewater treatment facility, the Tri Lakes Wastewater Treatment Facility, for treatment. This map gives you a pretty good idea as far as what the development will be. You can see the lot lines that are shown on the map. Most of the development being on the north side of the property. The lift station, which is the red star on the lower half of the development, as I mentioned, is located a couple hundred feet south of Monument Creek. You can see how Monument Creek flows down through the development from the west and then flowing down south through. The Tri Lakes Wastewater Treatment Facility is located just northwest at the northwest corner of the property, or off the property, but just northwest of that corner. The red line is the boundary for the service area for the development. Okay, go to the next slide, please. Just kind of zooming in a little bit on the location of the lift station. It's about, I believe it's about a 6,000 square feet, 6,500 square feet property boundary for the lift station, and it's located just south of the Monument Creek. There'll be a new bridge that will be constructed. There's an existing bridge there now. An existing road goes through there now, but that will be upgraded as part of the development. And The force main would then cross underneath Monument Creek, planning to do it by horizontal directional drill is the plan, and then we would get it back up. Once we get north of the creek, we would then get into the road with the force main. Okay. Just a photograph of the site that shows in the background. You can see the sign. Obviously, is about the location of where the lift station site would be, and then in the background, we have the existing bridge that's there now, and again that will be upgraded, replaced with a new bridge. And then the force main horizontal directional drill is planned to be just on the east side of the bridge. And you can see the sign that was posted for the public notice that was installed on February 12th. So that we've already met our 15-day requirement for CDPHE requires to have public notice before it's submitted to them. And this map is showing a little bit more detail on the force main connection, as we are planning to run the force main to the north and discharge, as I mentioned, into an existing gravity sanitary sewer line that is already located on the north end of the development, and that would flow and convey the wastewater then to the wastewater treatment facility. Okay. This slide shows a preliminary site plan of the lift station site. I'll just point out some of the features. As I mentioned, we have the SS lines, or the sanitary sewer lines, coming in from both the north, the south, and the west, and they'll combine together into a manhole and then flow into the site. There'll be a grease interceptor ahead of the wet well, and the plan is to use submersible chopper pumps, which is the district's standards for the wastewater pumping. There'll be 2 pumps. Each will be sized for 100% of the peak hour flow of 270 gallons a minute, so we'll have 100% redundancy. And we also then will have a valve control building that the force mains would then come through, so we'll have everything enclosed in a heated structure for easy access to the piping, and then the controls as well would be in that building. And the force main would then continue to the north, discharging and leaving the site, going towards the creek. We'll have an emergency generator, natural gas-powered generator, and at the lower on the lower part of this site plan, which is the south side of it, we are showing some overflow storage tanks that will be installed, and those are being sized, either one or multiple tanks. There will be sized for 8 hours of the maximum diurnal flow, which is the sanitary district's requirement for overflow storage. The district has determined that gives them sufficient time to respond if they're in the event that we have a pump failure and we have an overflow. There'll be a pipe. It's not shown on this drawing. There's a pipe that then would connect the wet well to the storage tanks, and then there'll be a second pipe that would be allowed with a valve on it that will allow the district to then open that valve and drain the wastewater back into the wet well once the pumps are operational again. And then finally, we have an odor control system, a bioxide system. We have space for one if needed. We do have a long force main. The force main is about 4,000 feet in length. And one of the good comments that we got from the Upper Monument Water Quality Association meeting was a recommendation to try to reduce or at least minimize the detention time in that force main as best we could. For that reason, we were using a 4-inch force main for the vast majority of that length, and the detention time at build out is about 40 minutes, which is good. Obviously, it'll be higher than that during the initial phases as we ramp up. So if we need it, we will be able to install an odor control system there. Bioxide is a calcium nitrate solution, which is very safe for the environment, and based on our preliminary calculations, we probably would not need more than maybe a gallon a day if we need to use it during the initial phases of development. Now, of course, we'll have a security fencing around the entire site, and there'll be a SCADA system as well that will be connected to the district's existing SCADA system. This slide is a section view of the lift station, looking at it from the road, from the main road. As you're looking at it, so you see the overflow tank on the right, and then the wet well in the center, and then the valve control building on the left. And we are preliminary anyway, planning on the influent sewer, which is shown as a circle about midway up the wet well there. That's about 10 feet deep, and that based on that elevation, that puts our wet well about 22 feet deep. And again, you can see the overflow storage tank and the piping, the overflow piping, the 12-inch overflow piping that we would connect starting just above the high water alarm would allow the wastewater to flow into that overflow storage tank. And then we'll have a second drain pipe below that coming out of the bottom of the overflow storage tank with a valve on it that would be manually then open. Normally that valve will be closed. Then district can respond to the pump for whatever reason that they're having high water alarms if the pumps have failed, and open that valve to let that wastewater drain back into the wet well and feed it back into the system again. As far as our design criteria, we are following the Monument Sanitation District standards. Of course, we have CDPHE's regulations as well. As I mentioned, we have 2 submersible chopper pumps, so we'll have 100% redundancy. We've been, really trying to make a lot of efforts here to prevent any overflows from leaving the site. So having the redundancy on the pumps. We have a grease interceptor, again, that will help with maintenance on the pumps and to protect the pumps. And we have the overflow storage that I mentioned before. The valves and controls will be inside a heated structure, so to protect that from any freezing potential that could break a pipe. We have the emergency generator with an enclosure, a weatherproof enclosure. The SCADA system that will be able to alert the district of any issues, high water alarms, power failures, any other, and of course any other types of operating levels in the wet well will be fed back into that SCADA system. And odor control, I mentioned earlier about the bioxide. So the purpose of the bioxide, because of long detention time, I probably should have explained it more, is to inhibit the formation of hydrogen sulfide. So it actually has kind of a dual role. It also will help with hydrogen sulfide at the wet well, so it's fed at the wet well, but it also inhibits the formation of hydrogen sulfides on the lining of the force main, so that helps prevent odors at the discharge manhole all the way to the north. And I apologize for not explaining that before. That's the purpose of the bioxide odor control. And we also will have a biofilter, kind of a passive biofilter on the vent for the wet well to help control odors at the lift station site itself. And then access and security. So obviously we'll have an access road coming off the main road to the site, and then we'll have security fencing around the site with all the gates being locked. And that's it in a nutshell as far as the features of the lift station and the force main. And I'd be happy to answer any questions and talk about any of this in any more detail if you'd like.
Where will the potable water come from?
Potable water is coming from the town of Monument, and there'll be a water line at right along the road that we'll be able to actually bring. So that will serve the whole development, but we can also have water available at the site if needed to just for housekeeping water at the site. And we'd have a backflow preventer on that, reduced flow backflow preventer.
Is there any provision for overflow containment? I know that the system is designed to not have overflows of any kind or leakage, but are there steps that are built in to provide containment in the event of around pumps, around buildings, anything like that? Or is it just going to be pads at grade?
So the wet well obviously is going to be submersible pumps in the wet well, and the wet well will be set just slightly above the top of the wet well will be slightly above grade, and then of course we have the overflow storage tanks themselves to allow any wet well high wet well levels to flow into that tank. The plan was that the building would have just a slab on grade. Certainly could put a containment curb around it to contain any splashes that may come off of it if we did have a leak inside that building. That's the only exposed piping that we'll have is inside that building. It's 2,750 gallons is the size of the tank. It's based on 10 minutes at peak hour flow, so 270 gallons a minute times 10 minutes. That's the district's criteria.
Just going to check to see if any online folks have any questions. Connie or Julia, do you have any questions about the presentation?
This is Connie King. I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Bring it to everyone's attention that last week the Site Application Review Committee met, and Mike made much the same presentation, although in further depth, to SARC. SARC had several comments. Those have been communicated to the consultant and to the applicant. And I think I haven't seen, or I didn't check the resubmittal. You picked up all those.
We addressed
comments.
all the comments in the submittal that went to this group.
Okay. Do we want to have a motion or a consensus to either approve or disapprove this application?
Samantha, which vice chair is ranking to call for that?
I think that's you, Mike.
Chair will entertain a motion concerning the Willow Springs Ranch wastewater lift station application. The next step on this would be to forward it to the PPACG Board of Directors with any other comments. Mr. Heckman moved.
Second.
Okay. Dave and Roy can fight over who's second. Any comments? Any comments to accompany beyond what SARC had? Hearing none, we'll call them the vote. All in favor, aye. Aye. All opposed? Vote carries without opposition. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next item of business is a presentation from Sarah Johnson.
Mine Water is proposing in the June Water Quality Standards hearing in front of the Water Quality Control Commission to change the standards for South Mosquito Creek and Mosquito Creek. Next slide. I am Sarah Johnson. I was for 25 years or so the manager of the standards unit for the Water Quality Control Division at CDPHE. I retired about 3 years ago and have continued to work on the London Mine project. I've been working on the London Mine for 25 years, I think, from one side or another. And so when Joe approached me for help in hoop management in the regulatory world, I said yes, that I would help. So that's me. Next slide. Joe Harrington is the owner of a company called Mine Water. There is a subsidiary or another company called Mine Water Finances that's intertwined with it. Joe is an active member of mine reclamation community worldwide and is working on bioremediation techniques in the world of acid mine drainage. He joined the community of interested parties in 2015 or 16 with an idea about how to improve the quality in the water of South Mosquito Creek and the Upper South Platte. And he has been involved in the installation and operation of the Gold King interim water treatment plant, which is the one near Silverton where EPA punctured the Gold King. Anyway, he's involved in that cleanup. Next slide. So the London mine, and hi Connie, it's nice to know you're still in the world. London mine is in the headwaters of the South Platte, way up above South Park. It's segments 2B and 2C of the Upper South Platte regulatory water quality basins, and it's in Park County. Next slide. The mine is located at about 11,000 feet. It was a big mine, underground mine. It's about 5 miles west of Alma, northwest of Fairplay, right up against Mosquito Pass. So it's way up there. Next slide. It was a historic gold mine. Do you folks remember Ben Wright? A real character. Roger, do you remember him? Oh, okay. So he owned the mine for many, many years and had various plans to re-mine and to open the mine. But he died in 2010. There have been historically 2 discharges from the mine. One is the extension tunnel, which was terribly polluted, very, very high cadmium and zinc numbers, and very, very low pH coming out of the extension tunnel. And there was a water tunnel that was a little lower, and it was quite a large discharge, but not quite so much pollutant. Over the years, DMG, Division of Minerals and Geology, and the Non-Point Source Program worked to create a treatment system at the extension tunnel, which did and did not work, depending on the weather. Actually, it was in the 1990s, Coors, one of the Coors brothers, filed for a water right on the water coming out of the extension tunnel, which was that those water rights were then purchased by a company called THF. They have a water right interest in the water tunnel. Next slide. In 2004, we, as the Water Quality Control Commission, adopted a feasibility-based water quality solution for Mosquito Creek and South Mosquito Creek with feasibility-based water quality standards for zinc and cadmium, which assumed continual treatment of that small discharge at the extension tunnel, but no treatment at the water tunnel. And the permits were written with that in mind in 2004. Next slide. Ben Wright died in 2010, and in about that same time frame, there were collapses inside the mine, which redirected the water flow so that the very poor quality water was now mixed with the better water, and almost all of it was coming out of the water tunnel portal. And as you can imagine, there was noncompliance, confusion, and litigation. Next slide. In 2016, in the spring, an order on consent was reached between the heirs of Ben Wright and various other parties, including THF, who had the water rights, to have sort of a global solution to the problem and pay the fines and move forward with Joe's idea about how to mitigate the situation. So Mine Water Finance was involved, and one of their main job under the consent agreement is the evaluation of an in-mine water treatment system. And the division agreed to cooperate, and it became effective in November of 2016. Next slide. So the early work that Joe undertook was inventory of the mine water. So how is the water flowing inside the mine? What are the potential improvements? How can we move forward with this bioremediation idea, and redirection of those flows? Next slide, please. So the lower Davis ore body, it's a big void, sort of in a lower elevation, is being used as the in-mine reactor vessel. So that's been, it's a big void. It will contain many, many years of sludge. There's been collection and redirection of the poorest quality water, so cofferdams, and redirection of those flows, and then piping and pumping of the additives that allow this bioremediation. It's really an alcohol solution that's going in. And also instrumentation is also in those pipes. So next slide. These are just some pictures of some of the work that happened in those early days and what it looks like inside the mine. These are not my pictures. I did not go. I don't like to go underground. Next slide. And you can see that color of the sludge. It's just a color that you're going to see in another slide. Next slide. So this is a picture of the settling ponds during the work, and you can see that it's coming in at I think the lower right corner, and there's some baffles that redirect it. So this was the way it looked during the remediation of the tunnel and some of that redirection. There's another couple slides of the pond, and it's been reconfigured and relined, expanded and relined in the last 18 months. So next slide. This is the way the portal looked in October. Next slide. And then they started working on developing they're fixing it up. And now one more slide. Here's the picture of the settling pond when there wasn't so much work going on inside the mine. Next slide. And this is a picture of the portal now. So they've done a significant amount of work at the site. In addition to this portal and the extension tunnel, because there hasn't been any water flowing out of the extension tunnel for several years now, they were able to, inside the mine, block it off, and then, I don't know if the tunnel has been absolutely collapsed, but regrade the exterior so that there is no more extension tunnel discharge, and we were able to discontinue and cancel that permit. So there's one less permit in the world. Next slide. This is kind of a lousy picture, but these are the monitoring sites in that area above Alma where there's been spotty, and then there's been water quality sampling done since I think the earliest sample I have in the database is 2006. So the mine is these are so here's the water tunnel. There's been some above the portal, above the discharge monitoring, and then down as you go all the way down to Alma. below that. And there are a few samples at the confluence with the South Platte, but not a lot. And the division doesn't have very many samples way down there either. So we're continuing to gather more data. Since 2016, there's a regular sampling plan and a quarterly sampling at all these sites. Next site.
Excuse me, is there any data on flow, average flow?
Oh, yes.
Annual flows, things
Oh,
of that nature?
of the discharge?
Yes.
Of the discharge, there's a great deal of information about the flow of the discharge. There's not a great deal of information about the flow of the creeks. So we are trying to beef up that. I think they're taking, well, when they do bug sampling, they're doing flows in the creeks. But yes, there's a great deal of water flow discharge information about the portal. And then this additional complication, which is water production.
Do you have those numbers in this, or
No, I don't, but I could get them.
is there any indication of how much water is coming out of it?
It's quite seasonal. It's very seasonal, and it is being reduced by the sealing of the exterior inputs. So that's another long-term plan, is to decrease the amount of water that's getting into the mine that reacts with the exposed minerals. So remember the water right that I talked about that Coors developed and filed on, and then THF bought. So the geology in this upper portion of the basin is such that there is an overlying strata of dolomite, which is a limestone rock, which does not have the minerals and the contaminants that are in the strata below it, which are reacting with the water, and the oxygen to produce acid mine drainage. THF and Coors got a declaration from the state engineer that this is non-tributary water. So it's kind of available for exploitation. And so high production wells have been completed and permitted for up to 8 CFS. And this is one of the rigs for that was used for drilling those high capacity wells. And the city of Aurora has contracted for delivery of this water in steps, in stages, and its delivery will be down Mosquito Creek to the South Platte River. Its delivery is. The water is already being produced. Next slide. Before I talk about that, one can imagine that this then provides a source of money to continue the treatment inside the mine, which has always been the problem, which is always the problem with mine cleanup, is how do we pay for it? So the impact on Park County. Joe and Minewater are employing drilling personnel and site people who work on the site. There are contractors in and out, and road maintenance. And there's a long-term commitment to continue this work and to provide water to the city of Aurora. So it's a significant employer in Park County. Next slide. So in terms of the permit, so meanwhile, we also have the permitting going on. The rerouting of the internal flows allowed cessation of the extension tunnel permit, but the water tunnel permit was revised and reissued in the fall of 2019. And as you all have experienced, the new permits have expanded requirements and compliance schedules for various things. Enough said. Next. including weekly sampling, and weekly sampling at 11,500 feet above sea level this time of year is difficult. So the long-term plan is permit compliance, continue to operate the in-situ treatment system, monitoring of inside and all of the fancy monitoring that goes on inside the mine and the alcohol system, as well as then environmental monitoring up and down the creek, which includes biomonitoring in South Mosquito Creek and Mosquito Creek. Working towards then a proposal and adoption of water quality standards that are achievable on a long-term basis. That's sort of my role in this, is to help figure out how to make this work. And currently, what we're working on is a site-specific standards proposal or ambient standards or a discharger-specific variance that would allow continued action on the mine site. Next slide. The current proposal in front of the Water Quality Control Commission is to remove the water quality standards from Mosquito Creek, the portion of the road, a portion above Road 698 and South Mosquito Creek. So currently, the notice we put in the entire segment 2B, which is all of Mosquito Creek, from the confluence down to the South Platte. But knowing that we would back it up as the well survey and the information came in, and so what we've settled on and what we're sure that we're not impeding or impacting anybody's water supply is at Road 698. So GEI has been doing most of the groundwork on this. Well surveys, land use surveys, zoning surveys, and here I am to consult with the local 208 agency about how you feel about this proposal. Next step. The rulemaking schedule. Some of you may be involved already. I don't know. I hope you are. Put my other hat on and say, it's really important to have everybody involved. The proposal and the notice was taken care of in January. The pre-hearing statements are due next week, March 11th. Party status requests are March 18th. That gives you a week to look at the proposals and the evidence and see if you want to be a party. I don't know what other proposals are in front of the commission this year. Jim, do you know? You're writing it down.
I'm writing it down. We have to go back and look it up.
Yeah, me too. Well, I've got to write a pre-hearing statement. But then rebuttals in May, and the hearing is in June. Same old schedule that we have always had for 20 years. Yes?
Sarah, is this part of the triennial hearing for the South
It
Platte?
is. It's part of the basin-wide hearing for the South Platte.
Okay.
So as you can imagine, there'll be 100,000 things in front of the commission.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next slide. The effects of Mine Water's proposal is for these parameters. Many of these parameters also have aquatic life standards, and so it's not like we're removing them. In the memo that I sent you, there's another column on this table which says probable effects of the permit on the permit, which wouldn't fit on this slide really. And the reason I put probable is we do not know, and permits is not in a position to tell us how something will play out. They're not staffed to the degree that they're able to take time to make these kinds of predictions. So it is not necessarily, obviously it doesn't have zinc and cadmium in it, which is our big problems. Arsenic is currently handled by a temporary modification, just like for everybody else's permit, so that's already handled. It's not a really giant thing. It's a small thing, but we're trying to take care of the small things first as we move forward with the other proposals at this, as as we're working on gathering data, aquatic life surveys, and those sorts of things. There is no public water supply use on South Mosquito Creek up by the mine and further up. There is no aquatic life. There are no wells below the confluence with Mosquito Creek down to Road 698, and there's no private land that could be developed. There's no probability of future use because, in the water supply use world, it's current and future use is what we're protecting. And so that's why we did a lot of work on zoning and planning and how the county, Park County has zoned that land. Next slide. The next steps after that are to continue, even regardless of how it comes out, we're continuing to clean up the mine site, regrading and vegetation, continue to work on the site-specific standards, recalculation, and to continue to work on water production, delivering clean water to Aurora. Next slide. This is a picture of the new lined settling pond. It's not from the same view, so it's not very helpful, but you can see that the water's clearer. Wish we could fluoresce the zinc or something. Next slide. And questions? Oh, there is another slide. There's another diagram in your memo that has just a bar chart of the zinc, historic zinc numbers. You can see how we're making some progress. That one high number in November has to do with when the site lost power, site and Alma and Fairplay lost power. Oh, thank you. There. So this is unfortunate. Yes.
Move in a backup generator. Excel Energy is sometimes pretty flighty up there.
Joe is on it. Yes, I think that's the plan. We have had. Did you see how high that is? The power actually comes over from Leadville, and so there's. It's an interesting place.
It's very cold, very difficult to get to at this
The
time.
The wind is just amazing up there.
Yes, it is.
Any time of the year. Other questions?
This is Mike. Other than passing past the road on the way to going skiing, I'm unfamiliar with that site. But is the Dolomite well connected hydrologically, with the mosquito, with the London mine water?
There are fractures, and it's moving through fractures. So one of the things that will happen as the limestone is dewatered over the mine is that there should be a reduction in flow into the mine.
Okay. And those are two separate water rights, correct? The well water right and then the...
the mine water once is a very small portion of the flow that's now coming out of the tunnel. Once the water right is made absolute, which will be early in 2022, the sources can be separated, and the clean water will be removed and routed around the bad water. And then there won't be any transmission of that water into the lower Davis ore body. And so the retention time in the reaction vessel will come down. Go up, excuse me. The zinc will come down, and cadmium. But it's all a juggling game at the moment until we get each one of these items perfected.
Are there any questions for Sarah, other than what Dave and I had mentioned?
Any folks online with any questions?
This is Connie King. I just want to thank Sarah for coming to talk to this group. It's fun to hear you in a different capacity.
It's funny how nostalgic seeing all your names made me. I was surprised at how much nostalgia and how much affection I have for all of you. Doesn't mean I'm going to the hearing, though. No.
You should go to the hearing.
No way. No. I already told Joe I would not appear.
So Sarah, from the 208 Water Quality Management Committee, what is our step in this process? You said that the compliance order said that you had to consult with us.
It's actually not the compliance order. It's the regulations for in the Water Quality Control Act. So any of the non-division proposals need to run through, and you all need to be notified of anything that's happening in your bailiwick about water quality that's going to come to the commission. Now, Connie, I don't believe any action is needed. Do you? You've done this before.
I don't think any action is needed. I think the requirement is that you give the presentation and the group has an opportunity to make comments if they want to.
And also so that you know what kind of funky stuff's happening in your basin. Thank you, Connie.
Sure.
Could you go back to the slide that showed the changes that are happening in the WS?
Oh, that one?
That one right there.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain to me, I'm not an expert, but the deleted value and remaining value? Just so I understand.
Okay, so water quality standards are developed to protect uses. And so if a water body, most water bodies have more than one use. And almost all waters in Colorado have an aquatic life use, and many have water supply use. Different standards are based on levels that are have been shown to be protective of that use. And so in some situations, aquatic life is more sensitive than human beings. And in some situations, human beings are more sensitive than aquatic life. And so if a water supply standard is removed, the aquatic life standard would still remain. And so even though, for instance, nitrate, the most sensitive use is people, babies with methemoglobinemia. So that's a 10 milligram per liter number. But aquatic life, there is that's an ag value to protect. My guess it's a livestock number for agriculture is the 100 milligram per liter. That number would remain in the tables, but the 10 would go away. Same with nitrite. Cadmium, it's a little more confusing because there's a flat 50 microgram per liter acute value for people, and then there's a sloped hardness equation, but it's also in dissolved. So you have total and dissolved. It's confusing. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Is the expected use of the harvested water, I heard the word cores, and I think of either food product or drinking water quality water. Is that an inaccurate assumption on my part?
It's actually going to Aurora.
Okay.
They sold it to Aurora. Coors sold it to THF, which sold it to Aurora. They are using different water than this. And they would need to meet those standards at the point of diversion, not at the point of, not here.
So dilution and other effects can be taken into
And
account.
the commission has a long history of not using the water rights system in that way, the decreed use. It's their own uses that they are obligated and authorized to protect, that the Water Quality Control Commission decides.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
I'm not exactly sure how to phrase this.
We'll do it
If,
and try
if we
again.
deleted the water supply classification off of this stream segment, that would not necessarily change discharge limits from the mined sources, because downstream segments that still had the water supply classification would be examined to see if those upstream discharges were to affect those. So by taking away this classification doesn't necessarily harm anything else.
Absolutely. The discharge has to protect uses in the receiving water and all uses downstream. It really changes the calculation. It can change. We're not sure exactly how it will change the permit limit. So South Mosquito Creek and North Mosquito Creek come together to form Mosquito Creek. So if the point of compliance, or the point where we're protecting a new use, is downstream in Mosquito Creek, all of the dilution from North Mosquito Creek could be used in the calculation of dilution.
Any other comments for the presenter? Hearing none. Good luck with your presentation in front of the Water Quality Control Commission.
Thanks.
Next item on the agenda is district database of map from the PPACG Planning Group.
Gone. I just turned the mic on.
The mic is on. Okay. My name's John Hanson, and I've been working on the water districts for El Paso, Taylor, and Park County. You may recall, if you've been around for a while, in the past we had worked on wastewater districts with Rich Mosey, if that name rings a bell. So in addition to that, that's being worked on as well. But we're also going to work on water districts and even some of these small water districts. I handed out a draft map of what has been done so far. Still working on the western part of Taylor County, and still need to do some work on Park County. We've been identifying these water districts initially from the assessor's office, what they call the tax entity maps. And they show boundaries that are delineated by parcels for water districts, water and sanitation, and then I've also found out that some of these metropolitan districts also are water districts, so to speak. So been researching that throughout all three of these counties, and using the parcels in a GIS format to gather the boundaries and do research on where these districts are getting their water from, how they're stored, and if there's water treatment occurring or not. Also been identifying some of these districts get water from elsewhere, raw water, so to speak, and then treating it there at their facilities. Some of these are small, some are large, some are given, such as Colorado Springs, CSU. Of course, the Cherokee district is well known. And then we have some of the outliers outside of the incorporated areas. And those are the hard ones to pick up on and do research, but I've been going through, some of them provide stats on their websites. Others I've been going through DOLA, the Special District Association of Colorado, of course the Colorado Department of Public Health, EDARP, which is the Electronic Development Application Review Program that's been providing a little bit of information, and county comprehensive water master plans, and pick up on some of their research. And then DOLA at their active Colorado local government website. So this is what I've done so far. This is a draft. Again, it's being set up in GIS format. The attributes, and if you will, Sam, click on our Cherokee district here. Try clicking right in here. There we go. These are the attributes that are being provided. A little bit of history, where the water is coming from, whether it's from the formations within the Denver Basin, perhaps how many wells are there, how deep they may be, if that information is provided. And it's pretty simple, but at least we have these identified and will be able to be used in future analysis. So this is all I have to offer. In the future, once we get this closer to completion, I'd like to distribute it and have everybody in their areas, give it a once over, see if everything looks good. Because some of this information is missing. I'm sure I might have missed something, but we're trying to make it exhaustive as possible. And it will be something to be used alongside with our wastewater districts. Questions?
John, thank you. This is Mike Fink, and I'm the water superintendent for the city of Fountain. And I was also on the steering committee for the El Paso County Water Plan, which was completed just over a year ago. And there was a very exhaustive listing that Mark and his staff and the consultants that they used put together for El Paso County, and especially for the unincorporated area. Suggest also that you go through CDPHE's PSID program, so every public water entity that's serving public water gets a PSID. There's two that, tough to tell on what you passed out, and but you've got to pick up Wqmc, and just in the last year, Pikes Peak International Raceway has been granted a PSID number, so that's relatively recent.
I've looked through that. The Wqmc Water District. If that's
it's not a district. It's a service.
Yes. I noticed that they were providing services just at the county line for the Pueblo communities, a small community down there. And I had a very hard time trying to make heads or tails of this.
They're headquartered at Pikes Peak International Raceway. They do supply water in both Pueblo County and in El Paso County, and their well is located within El Paso County. That is their supply source.
Near the tracks?
Yes.
Okay.
And then there are two wells that the city of Fountain owns that we provide water to Pikes Peak International Raceway at the bottom of the well. They run all the infrastructure.
Okay.
And they have their own PSID number. Again, it's relatively recent. I think it was October last year.
Yeah, there's that small community
Yeah,
through
Midway
there
Ranches,
that's
yeah.
sparsely populated. And I noticed that lots 1 and 4, if I recall, were being provided by this, but it
Yes.
did not make sense to me. So I have not included that at this point until I could get verification. So I would love to speak with you later on
Sure.
about this. I appreciate that info.
So, yeah, check in with Mark Gebhardt at County. He was the project manager for El Paso County for the water master plan.
And that was, he's working with Fountain City?
No,
Hall now?
he's the deputy director, I believe, of the planning group at El Paso County.
Okay.
And the outreach was exhaustive for not just public water entities that were cities, that were districts and such like that, but also for a lot of private ones, some of which run with the sanitation sanitation treaters that we're picking up now, where they have a package plant and a well out in the eastern end of El Paso County.
Yeah.
Those are tough to chase down.
It was very elusive, and so I kind of put it on the back burner. And of course, you won't see it on this map until I could get further verification on that. Is anybody familiar with the Pioneer Lookout District? Okay. I understand that it serves 67 people, and yeah, and it's a district within itself. Is this correct? Yeah, I was just a little Inselberg, just sitting out there just southwest of Palmer. And that one kind of stumped me, but that is included on this map, even though it might be hard to see. But it's some of these smaller districts that are pretty hard to pick up on. So been doing this for Teller County. I'm going to continue on with Park County. And again, the attributes are kind of annotated on this, but we're trying to keep things somewhat simple, and hopefully will be of use once it's completed.
Committee, any comments, any further questions, or any helpful pointers for John?
Well, is there an area where we can view it to give him some comments or whatever?
Still in its infancy, so we'd kind of like to hold off. Could get in contact with Samantha once we feel a little bit more secure on distribution of this. And I'll need to speak to Will on how he feels we should proceed from this initial point. But yes, we will try to give you some source, some link, the actual file itself with given time, so that you could perhaps QA/QC it in your free time, which would be greatly appreciated. Because trying to cover 3 counties has been an undertaking. So I'll be in contact with Samantha since she knows everybody else here. And so stand by, please.
Thank you very much, John. It's going to be, it's a tough job.
It is. I didn't think it was going to, but you start digging deeper and you keep finding tangents and everything else. So yeah, it'll be a good product once we come out with it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Samantha, do you have an update on the adoption process for the 208 update? Is that what the next one is?
Yes, I do. I believe I sent you all an email stating that with everything going on with PFAS and PFOA, the hearing date for WQCC review has been moved to August 11th. So that gives us a little bit more time to fine-tune it. I did receive last week edits and comments from CDPHE on the 208 plan. I haven't had the opportunity to look at those edits and reviews. I do plan on doing that within the next week or so. So my plan is to look at those comments and reach out to any of you if there's like specific sections with information that either they want more detail on, or if I have any questions regarding that. CDPHE is willing to take another look at it as well before the August hearing date. We have until June to make these edits, which will come up quick, I'm sure. So in the meantime, while I'm looking at this 208 document and updating the edits and comments that CDPHE provided, I'm also going to look at membership of WQMC, updating maybe our chair, since it sounds like we're a little unsure who's chairperson's here. But my ask for you is if you have any folks that may be interested in being a part of WQMC. I know we have a few site applications coming up in the few months, so we will be meeting pretty regularly, at least for the next few months, to review these site applications. So if there's anyone looking for membership, I'd be interested in having that contact information, as well as updating the chairs for our PPACG board to approve. So any questions regarding QMC or the 208 update? Great. Thank you.
Is there any more business to come before the PPACG Water Quality Management Committee? Seeing none, I'd like to hear a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Dave moved and Jim seconded. Thank you very much. We'll meet again.